Hello, Business 330 students. This is Professor Hassey speaking to you live and in color from Claremont, California on this Saturday morning, September 19th. And you're all relaxing this weekend. I hope you are. This is our hybrid weekend, no class. And I do a lecture for about an hour to review material for our next class next Saturday, September 26th. Here's our agenda. We're going to be remembering to remind you to have an assignment. Number one is due tomorrow, Sunday, September 20th by 11 o'clock in the evening. Post it to Blackboard. If you have any difficulties posting, be sure to let me know via email or via text or via phone call if you have any difficulties posting tomorrow. Also, two students still have some work to do on cleaning up your student portfolios in our discussion post of a week ago. Please, if you don't see a grade for your discussion post for your portfolio, go to my reply to your discussion folder, and you still have to resubmit your portfolio to clean up a couple of things. So make sure you check your discussion forum if you don't have a grade to see if you have to post some remaining work. So those are the two things we have to do as far as grades this weekend. Today we're going to talk about Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is about the time value of money. I like to call it the past, present, and future in finance. This will lead us up to next week on Saturday at 8 a.m., where we will have a morning session on bonds and stocks and an afternoon sessions on investment return analysis, chapters 8 and 9. So a lot of material next week, a lot of prep to do, and then you get another assignment next week. That assignment will be number 2, which will be on chapters the study of today, 5, and next week, chapters 6 and 7. 5, 6, and 7 will be your next assignment next week. So that's where we start today. I'd like to refer you to our Blackboard file folder, if I may. Let's bring that up. Here's our Blackboard file folder for our class. And if you go to week 3, which is a no class week, click on that file folder. There's our agenda for today that I just showed you. If you click on that file, it shows you the agenda. You can also, when you do see these files that I've posted in Blackboard, if you click this, you can download that file to your desktop in case you need it, or you can print it out right from your Blackboard file. I also have some review problems that we're going to review. Not all of these, but they are representative problems from Chapter 5. The solutions to those problems are located here. And I will be doing a spreadsheet in just a few minutes going over some of those sample problems in a spreadsheet format. So you'll have that, and I'll post that spreadsheet as soon as we're done with our hybrid week off lecture this morning. Here's a nice video explaining the time value of money and some introduction information for you. Our finance fact for this week, remember the first week it was the S&P 500, what was the meaning of that index? Last week in week 2, it was the Dow Jones Industrial Index. And this week it's the NASDAQ index, all 3 indexes which you track in your portfolio calculations. Finance Fact is a little ditty I have every week of our course explaining some key terms in the real world of finance. And then some preliminary work about our work next week, bonds and stocks and what is a stock, some preliminary videos, and also a review of Chapter 5, the time value of money, some key points, and the PowerPoint and a nice quick little video about that from the publisher. So that's all information you should take a look at this week. And don't forget, next week in week 4, you should prep for the class by going there and looking at the material provided for review problems, which will review an introduction, some videos, and the financial fact, and then some PowerPoints and information from each chapter that we're going to talk about 6, 7, 8, and 9 next week. So a lot of material. But let's forget about next week for now. Let's get back to week number 3 and bring up a little spreadsheet that I've begun to prepare here. Here it is, and this spreadsheet will be in our week 3 in-class review notes. It's from the chapter 5 of your text. More specifically, the problems at the end of the textbook, pages 154 to 157. Also, I'll be talking about amortization, and that's on page 140 to 141. Okay, remember we talked a little bit about this last week, but the chapter 5 is about money, dollars, capital. Okay, let's call it all those. Money, cash, capital. And depends if you live in the United States, dollars. All right, and it's the value today, the value in the future. All right, and it's how you receive that money, how you receive those dollars. Is it in one lump sum or a stream of cash flow? Now that stream could be the same, or it could be a different flow of money. All right. And what makes up that the value of the money today or in the future is not only the dollars you're talking about, but also the interest rate on the money at that time. And also the third area of concern is the time value involved. Time, how much time? 1 day, 6 months, 1 year, 3 years? What's the time period involved? Remember, money changes value over a period of time for a variety of reasons. The first reason is interest. The cost of money changes. Many people like to call that inflation. All right. The value of money changes because of supply and demand. If there's a lot of demand for money and very limited supply, then that interest rates will go up. But if it's like today, in today's economy, there's a rather decent demand for money, but there's an awful lot of supply. So interest rates are low. There's a lot of money available. You can get, if you have good credit, you can get a loan very easily. If you're a corporation, if you have good credit, you can get a loan very easily. Money is cheap because there's a supply of money matching the demand for money. But in certain areas of economic past, hasn't been this way for a while, if there's a greater demand for money and a small supply, that's when you start having inflation. That's when interest rates starts going up. But due to monetary policies by the United States government and the Federal Reserve, the supply for money and the demand for money are basically equal. Thus, interest rates are very low. Now, for a person borrowing or a company borrowing money, that's a great deal. Money's cheap. You can go get a mortgage today for 3%. You can get a car loan today for 2.5%. Cheap money. That's if you're borrowing. But if you're investing in money, it stinks. You're not getting much of a return. You know this, if you put money into a savings account, how much interest do you get on a savings account? It's basically zero. All right. Very low interest rates investing. That's why the stock market is still consideredly the best investment. Investing in the market of stocks is because there's a greater return than if you put money into a savings account. If you put money into cash, that's why the stock market continues to do well. So that's the value of money. So we're going to take a look at a couple examples this morning of calculating and reviewing the value of money. Because why? Throughout the rest of our course, beginning next week, our sole goal in finance is to remember the definition of finance is the maximization of shareholder value. I think I just gave away an assignment question answer. Oop, I got to keep my mouth shut on that. But that's the goal of finance. Well, what does that mean? It means you purchase assets to create products. And the future value of those assets you want to grow. In other words, the return of those assets, you want to make those assets in your company go increase in value. That's successful financial management. How you get those assets is you borrow money, you issue equity, you make a profit. The cost of issuing debt, the cost of issuing equity or stock, you want to have a lot lower than the return you're making off those assets. Then you know you're running a successful company. It's when you get into a problem, when you purchase assets who do not perform, you lose money. Maybe business is bad, the economy is bad, the cost of money exceeds the return. That's when you start getting into problems. And that's why many of you are being trained as business women, businessmen, to understand that. You're not going to put your company or yourself in an investment where the return into the future is going to be less than the cost today of getting that money. Not too smart. I don't think you would be buying a car today if you knew that the monthly payment on that car exceeded your monthly income. Ain't going to work. Same with a mortgage. So you want to purchase assets individually or as a company or a corporation. You want to purchase assets that create return to exceed the cost. That's the goal of financial management. Well, to get to that management strategy and how to do that, we have to understand the concept. And that's what chapter 5 is about. So let's take a look at problem 4 on page 154 of your text. And again, these solutions are also in Blackboard, but the solutions in Blackboard are just written out. They're not in a spreadsheet format. That's why I want to select a couple of these problems to show you how to do them in a spreadsheet, because I know a lot of you are still learning how to use a spreadsheet, how to use formulas, and this is an important skill to have, because we're going to be doing problems throughout our course that involve these types of calculations. Now, once when I get through with the lecture today, and you have some questions, if you do have questions after that lecture that you watch on video, you have a variety of resources to ask questions. You can send me an email. You can go to the discussion forum in week 3 questions and type in a question and I will answer it back. Or you can hold your questions for class for next week, however you want to do that. But if you do have questions, please feel free to ask them. Also, don't forget our student hours during the course of a week on Zoom. The student hours links are in Blackboard in the Zoom links file folder. I have student hours on Monday and Wednesday afternoons from 1 to 3 p.m. and Tuesday and Thursday afternoons from 3 to 5 p.m. Okay, well, let's look at question 4 on page 154, the very top of the page. Compute the future value of $100 cash for the following combinations of interest rates and times. In other words, what's the future value of $100 if I invest it for a particular amount of period of time at a particular interest rate? Remember, I said up here, money, cash, capital, dollars have a value today and a value in the future determined by the amount of dollars invested, the interest rate, and the time. So I have $100 today. What is it going to be worth in 10 years? What is it going to be worth in 20 years? If it's invested at an annual rate of 8% versus 4%. All right? Well, you can do this by a calculator very easily. You just have to do it over and over. But you can go into Excel. You can go into Mac numbers. You can go into Google spreadsheets and calculate this information using formulas. I see here on my screen is the formulas. If I go to formulas, insert function, and click on that, up comes a function table. All right. If I go to select a category, all right, I want to go to the financial functions, and up come a whole bunch of series of functions, and I want to look for future value. So I'm looking for the function future value under financial functions that are provided in your spreadsheet. Again, this is the advantage of having spreadsheets. look at all the different functions. If I wanted to, I could calculate that I have at my disposal with this spreadsheet programming formulas. So if I click on future value, up comes a little argument. And this is where I put in the information from the problem. First of all, what am I trying to find? Well, I'm trying to find what $100 is going to be after 10 years at 8%. So under rate, I type in 8%. For the number of periods, I type in 10. All right. I leave payment blank because we are not making a payment here. We're just investing a lump sum of money, and that's $100. So I type in $100 as minus 100. In other words, we're dispersing $100 at 8% for 10 periods. If I hit OK, there's my answer, $215.89. See how that works? So now if we go down below it, and let's say we want to do the same calculation for 4%. Again, back to the function key for formulas, financial, future value. And you can practice this on the spreadsheet later if you'd like. Future value, now the rate is not 8%, but 4%. The same periods, 10, and the same amount of today's lump sum or PV investment, minus 100, and $148.02. Notice the higher the interest rate, the greater the return of your money invested over that period of time. All right. Well, now let's try to do it for 20 years. Now, naturally, at 20 years, you think, ooh, now I'm going to probably make some better money. So formulas, function, financial, future value, 8%, 20 years now, number of periods. Today's present value is we're investing minus $100, $466.10. That's telling us that money has a future value at a certain amount of investment, in this case $100, over a certain amount of time period, 20 years, invested annually at 8%. Now let me show you an example though. What happens is if the annual rate is 8%, but it's semi-annual payments? In other words, it's twice a year, semi-annual. Well, if it was semi-annual, that means the interest rate per period would be 4%. But the number of periods would be 40, right? Because if I'm making semi-annual income distributions off this investment twice a year, I'm getting 40 payments or 40 periods instead of 20, and it's at 4% per period because it's twice a year, 8% divided by 2. Well, if I decided to put that in my formula, I could do it this way. Function, now the interest rate is 4%, but the number of periods is 40. Look what my amount is, $480.10. A little different because I'm having it over the same 20 years, but it's being discounted or compounded twice a year. So let's go back to our original one. I just wanted to show you that because that's important to know as well. So notice we're making $14 extra if we get a semi-annual rate. It's the same interest rate, but it's doubled a year, twice a year. We get 14 bucks more. Let's take a look now at 20 years at 4%. Function, financial, future value, 4%, 20 years, and now let's say I didn't put the minus 100. Let's say I just put 100. Watch what happens. The only thing difference is it's the same number. It just makes it look, whoa, what did I do wrong? It just says minus $219.11. The reason for that is the logarithm, the formula, the calculation didn't include, by minus, you didn't say, remember in the old arithmetic minus times a minus is a positive. But here, if we just put in a positive number, it ends up being minus. So if we just go back and change that now to minus 100, it'll go back and be a positive number. It's the same number. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just how it shows sometimes freaks students out. So if that's why you put negative, you'll get a positive number in your answer. So that's the future value of money. It's fairly simple. It's just making sure you pick the right formula, FV, future value. You make sure you know how much is being invested over how many years at whatever the rate is per period. If it's an annual, it's an annual rate. If it's semi-annual, you take that annual rate divided by 2. If it's a quarterly rate, you take that annual rate and divide it by 4. If it's a daily rate, compounded daily, you take that annual rate and you divide it by 365. That's basically how your savings account is determined. That's how that works. So that's the future value of money. Let's save this and move on. Okay, where future value is taking money today and going into the future, the present value is taking money into the future, money in the future, and what is its value today? Another name for present value is also called discounting. When you discount money, you're bringing it from the future today. Now, where is this used? Well, a lot of you probably don't have much experience, but at the end of this class, you'll have a lot of experience. And by the end of your business studies, you'll have a lot of experience with present value or discounting, is because I need $1 million in the future. Okay, I have to pay back a loan and I need to pay it back in 5 years, $1 million. What do I need to invest in today to put money aside at a certain interest rate over 5 years to have that $1 million in the future? Okay, that's an example of present value. Another example is I plan on investing in an asset. That asset is going to produce a return over time of a certain amount of money every year. If I discount that future money back to today's value, that's the value of that asset in today's real dollars. That's another example of present value. We'll be using a lot of examples of that, especially when we get into chapters 8, 9, 10, and 11. It's called discounted cash flow. All right, well, let's take a look at some examples of this. And we'll use the example or the information from problem 4 that we just completed. I have $215.89 in the future. If I discount that money back at 8% for 10 years, it should be equal to $100 today. That's the present value of this future value. All right, well, let's take a look at that. If I go into my formulas function, go to financial, but now I look for PV, present value, not FV, future value, but PV. There it is right there, present value calculation. Bring that up, and now I type in my rate, 8%, that's the discount rate. It's over 10 periods of time. And the future value is that minus $215.89. That's the future value. What is that value is today? $100. How about that? That's the future value of $215.89 discounted at 8% back over 10 years. Let's do the next one. Let's take, again, function, present value. Now use the rate of 4%, 10 periods, and the future value there was minus 148.02. What's the present value? $100. See how that works? If we know the future value, we can discount it back to today over a certain interest rate, a certain period of time, and that's what the money is worth today. The present value. All right? Two very important terms you'll be using a lot in the future of your business studies. What's the future value of money if I know what I'm investing today? Or what is the present value of money if I know what I'm getting in the future? And these are two examples of that. Let's finish up this. Let's go out 20 years now. Determine the present value. Financial, present value. The rate is 8%. Now the periods are 20. And the future value is minus 466.10. What's the present value? $100. And then finally, the 4% function, PV. %, 20 periods. And now I won't put in the minus sign for future value. I'll just type in 219.11. And it gives me, oh, there it is again. It's still $100, but because I didn't put in the minus sign, it makes it a negative number. No big deal. It's not a big deal. It's the same number. It's the same number. But again, just to show you what happens. So now I'll go back and put in that minus sign, and there we go. So there are two examples of discounting, taking money into the future, determining its rate or value today. Two important concepts from Chapter 5, future and present value. A third concept is illustrated in problem 14 at the bottom of page 154. Let's take a look at that problem. We have, what is the present value now? Instead of a lump sum dollar amount, they give us a flow of payments, a future flow of money being generated off an investment. In year one, we're going to get $200, as you can see here. Year two, we're going to get $400. And year three, we're going to get $300. So that's $900 of money being received in the future. All right. Well, we're told in this problem that our cost of money or our interest rate is 6%. 6%. That's our discount rate. All right. And the question is asking you, what is the present value of this cash flow total? In other words, we know we're getting $900, but what's it worth today when we're getting it discounted at 6%? All right. There's two ways of doing this. Two ways of doing this. Number one is determine the present value of each amount every year. Another is determining the present value, lumping them all together. Two different ways of doing it. They'll both give you the same number. Let me show you. We'll go back to our example that we used up here. What's the formula? Function, financial, present value, PV. The interest rate given to us in the problem is 6%. That's the discount rate. Now for this first year, the number of period is 1. The future value is minus 200. And there's the present value. In 1 year, if we get $200, that's worth today, at the beginning of the year, at 6%, $188.68. Well, let's do year 2. Present value. Interest rate is still 6%. But now the number of periods is not 1, but 2. And the future value is minus 400, 356. That's the present value at 6% over 2 years. And then finally, the third year. Same calculation, with just the number of periods has changed. Present value, 6%, 3 years, and the future value is minus 300. And there we go, $796.56. So the $900 discounted, notice we have to do a different calculation because the cash flow is different every year. If we do those and add them all up, the present value of $900 over the next 3 years, discounted at 6%, is actually worth $796.56. All right, makes sense. There's another way of doing that though. Watch. Formula, function, financial, NPV. Right there. net present value. This is when you can group a whole slew of numbers together or years. Net present value. All right. The rate is 6%. That doesn't change. The value, all you have to do is go to your values here and click on and scroll down. Notice I'm putting in D25, D26, D27. That's the values. That's the stream going out in the future. I hit OK. Look at that. The same number. And a lot quicker, I might add. 796.56. Either way is fine. But you'll see as we get farther along in our course, when we start going out over 20, 30 years, this NPV calculation is a lot quicker because we can wrap all the years into one line and have it do its work instead of going one by one by one. But either way is fine. So $900 received over the next 3 years in different amounts, 200, 400, and 300, has a present value today of $796.56. Okay, pretty cool. This is called the present value of an annuity. In other words, we're determining the present value of a series of payments into the future, where the annuity changes every year. Annuity means a series of payments. We need to be familiar with this, as you'll see in a couple of weeks. And finally, we close our discussion of Chapter 5 with something that you all probably know about, but always wondered, how did they calculate that? It's on pages 140 and 141 of your textbook. It's called the future value of annuity, but another word for it is called amortization, right there. The future value of an annuity, or it's called amortization. Problem 14 is we're doing the present value of a series of annuities, cash flow. In amortization, we're determining the future value of an annuity, or better known as amortization. What's amortization? You go into a car dealership and you're negotiating to determine on a car. And you say, I want to borrow a certain amount of money for that car. So all of a sudden, your car salesman or woman says, please excuse me, I got to go back and run the numbers. And what they do is they run your credit rating, get your FICO score, load that into their computer, and give you an interest rate that you're going to pay on your car loan. Remember, the better the FICO score, the lower the interest rate. And then if you're borrowing over a period of time, they'll determine what your monthly payment is going to be. That's called an amortized loan. A series of equal monthly or yearly payments to pay off an obligation, like a car loan. And then once you see what that monthly or that payment will be, you compare that to what you can afford, and now you see or whether you can buy the car or not. If any of you have a mortgage, that's an amortized loan, a series of equal payments. Well, I want you to be familiar with how to calculate that, okay? And it's using another function that's provided by our spreadsheets, and it's called PMT, payment. So I got a very simple example here. Let's say we're going to borrow $1,000. This is the example that they use on page 140. We're going to put those into a spreadsheet and calculate them. Let's say we're going to borrow $1,000, and it's going to be over 4 years, and it's just going to be one payment a year. It's not going to be monthly. Then it'll be 12 payments a year. It's going to be one payment a year for 4 years. The interest rate is 10%. Wow, pretty high. You must have bad credit, or I must have bad credit. 10%. Well, what is that monthly payment going to be? Formulas, function, financial, and we look for the function payment, PMT. PMT, there it is right there. Payment calculates the payment of a loan based on constant payments and a constant interest rate. In other words, if you want to pay the same amount every period, in this case once a year, and the interest rate is going to stay the same, which most loans stay the same, unless you get an adjustable rate mortgage, but that's a calculation for graduate school, not here. And your interest rate is the same. That's called a fixed rate loan. Bring that up. What's our interest rate? 10%. How many periods? Well, we're making 4 payments over 4 years. And the present value of the loan is we're borrowing $1,000 minus $1,000. We're borrowing $1,000 and we're going to pay it back at 10% over 4 periods. What's our monthly payment? $315.47. That's if we make 4 payments of $315.47, we're paying back the $1,000 plus interest at 10%. Well, let's put that into an amortization schedule. All right. So under payment, let's say equals, and I'll keep the cell constant. And the cell was where we made that calculation, row or column C, row 37. See, I put a $sign in here. That means I can now copy this cell down to the following years, and it'll be the same for every year because I kept that amount constant every cell. So if I just copy this down, you'll see how that works? Now I have that payment in my schedule. Well, let's say for the first year, I'm making a payment on the loan of $1,000 at $315.47 as we calculated. What is the interest on that money? Well, $1,000 at 10% in this cell. See, I'm taking $1,000 times 10%. That's $100. So how much of that $357.47 is paying on principal of that loan? It's the difference between $100 and $315.47. My principal of that payment is $215.47. I now take $215.47 and subtract it from $1,000. That's my balance of my loan at the end of the first year. I bring that balance forward to the second year. There's my payment. 10% of $784.53 is this. Subtracted from the payment, there's my principal, balance. And notice I pay off the loan. To zero. So I'm making, let's total up this, I'm making a total of $1,261.88. Copy that there. There's my payments of interest. And naturally, there's my payments of principal. And that's the loan. And the bank at the beginning of the whole process, by using the PMT function of a spreadsheet or a calculator, can determine that future value of the annuity at $315.47. And then I plug that into this table and I see how that works to pay off the loan, my total amount of my payments, my interest, and my principal. That is called an amortization schedule. I might ask you to do one of these things later on in our class. But the most important thing about it is when I go out and borrow money, or a corporation goes out and borrows money in an amortized loan, which is different from a bond financing that we'll talk about next week in chapter 6. An amortized loan means a series of equal payments over a period of time to pay back the amount we're borrowing, where the interest and principal changes every period, every payment. Why? Because my balance drops at the end of every payment. So my interest is being reduced over time. My source of my principal is increasing over time. If any of you have a car loan where you're making monthly payments, any of you have a mortgage where you're making monthly payments, this is exactly how that works. It's called amortization on pages 140 and 141. So I'm now going to save the spreadsheet and insert it into our week 3 in-class review. So you have the spreadsheet with all the examples of future values of money, present values of money, present value of a cash flow stream of money, and an amortized or future value of an annuity of a series of payments over time, and determining the amount of paying off an amortized loan. The key definition here is an amortized loan is an equal series of payments over time to pay back a loan. And these are the key points of Chapter 5. Okay, so if I go back to my Zoom file folder, click on week 3, week 3 file, time value of money, no class. And now if you notice in week 3 hybrid week review, you'll see that spreadsheet that we just did. Week 3 class video lecture problems. There's the spreadsheet that you can download and use as an example. Because in the next week, assignment number 2, you're going to have some problems in that assignment from chapter 5 that are going to ask you to calculate the future value of money, the present value of money, the present value of cash flow being received in the future, and an amortization schedule, just like what we prepared in this spreadsheet. So those are your practice problems to prepare for that assignment number 2, which will be given next Saturday. And here are all those problems from the chapter with their solutions, but I would concentrate especially on that spreadsheet that I gave you. Okay. Well, I think that pretty well wraps up my lecture for Chapter 5 and our off-week part of our class. We'll go at it all morning and into the afternoon next Saturday. Let me put this back up here. There we go. Remember, you have your assignment number 1 due tomorrow evening. Please make sure you post that. You have a couple of you students need to finish and clean up your portfolio spreadsheets and repost them to the discussion forum. Please check on that and make sure you do that. Follow up on that. Review Chapter 5 and plan and review. Get ready for next week's class, and I'll send you an introduction video on Wednesday preparing you for Saturday's class, Chapters 6 and 7 and 8 and 9. So that was pretty short and sweet. This is how it's going to go in our off weeks throughout our term. Just go over the material for the week and answer and go over some sample of that material. So I hope you have a great weekend. Stay healthy, be well. For those of you who live in the Pasadena and the Yucaipa area, you're going to have a lot of still bad air. So be careful, stay indoors, wear a mask, and we'll see you all next Saturday morning, and look for my introduction video next Wednesday. Be well, everybody, and thank you. Bye-bye.